So you received a non-straightforward email in response to your study visa application to the UK. Well, let's try to answer some of the burning questions that you might have. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Roslyn, and in this video I'm going to be talking to you about NSF emails. If you're here, it means that you've gotten an NSF email, and this is not a topic that is a popular one that a lot of people know about. You either have received one or you know someone who has received one. Well, I'm going to be answering some of the burning questions that you might have. Basically, NSF is an acronym for non-straightforward. This is a response you might receive from the UKVI upon submitting your application, sometimes as early as 24 hours after you've submitted your biometrics. Now, there are two types of NSFs that you can receive. One is what we call the empty NSF. So what is the empty NSF? The empty NSF is just a message letting you know that your application might be taking longer than the normal agreed timeline. So I'm just going to read a sample of what it looks like. I'll probably have it somewhere on my screen. Thank you for applying for the UK study visa. Your application has been received and is under consideration. We aim to process non-settlement applications within 15 working days and settlement applications within 120 working days. Unfortunately, the processing of your application has not been straightforward, and we will be unable to decide on your application within our customer service targets. We continue to work on your application and aim to make a decision as soon as possible. And then some other information there if you received this. Well, what this simply means is that you might not be able to get your application completed within the agreed customer service timeline. So for a standard application, it's 15 working days. If you've paid for the priority or super priority, so you're working with either 24 hours or 1 week, or 15 working days. And usually on or before this timeline, you would have received a decision from the UKVI. When they are not able to meet this timeline, this is an email that you might receive. Now, there's another type of NSF that you might receive, and this is the one that comes with a request, right? So it might be a request for additional documentation, or it might be a request for an interview, right? And this might even come subsequently. So it might be a request for documentation, and after submitting your documentation, it might actually be an additional request for an interview. So this is how it will read if you would receive something like this. The UK Decision Making Center is currently assessing the application submitted by you. We are unable to conclude the application at this time and require additional information. Please provide the following documents. So they would list the documents I need to provide. Might be 1, might be 2, might be 3. For this person, they wanted official verifiable documents to demonstrate what you have been doing since you graduated in 2014. Please send these documents as a scanned attachment within 10 working days to, there's an email address there, quoting your application reference in the subject line, blah 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 blah, additional information. So if you received an email like this, it means you have 10 working days to provide documents that have been requested from you. Now, I have a couple of questions, like I said, that I'm going to be answering. So we're going to be taking these questions one by one. I have them written down. Now, what do you do when you receive an NSF? So if you receive an empty NSF, there's really nothing you can do. It's just informing you that your application will take longer, right? Sometimes you might receive additional NSFs, which is now an email letting you know what additional requirements they want from you. But other times you might never receive an additional email until you get a decision on your visa application. Now, if you received an NSF email that requires you to submit documents, please do well to submit the documents within the timeline that you have been given, because failure to submit this document is an automatic rejection. Like there's no two ways about it. If you do not provide the document that they receive, you will get a rejection. Now, you're free to apply again upon receiving a rejection, but that is not just ideal, and it's not what anybody wants to go through given the stressful situation that you're in. So the best thing you have to do is work on getting the documents that has been requested from you. So what are the types of information that they might ask from you? So they might want to have proof of English if your English results or English certificates you provided is not enough. If you had certain documents in your CAS, certain documents mentioned in your CAS, and these documents have not been provided in your application, you might be required to provide these documents. If you've made previous applications in the past and you supplied certain information and they need to verify those information against the current information that you are given, they might want to ask for certain documents that are not the standard documents that you would normally provide. So for instance, I've had someone who was asked to provide his birth certificate, right? So they wanted to confirm his identity because his identity was in question based on a previous application that he had made. So it might also be for other reasons such as financial, if your bank statement is not clear enough. So if you have not scanned and uploaded a very clear copy, they might require you to send your financial statement again. It might be your certificate or your transcript. For instance, I'm Nigerian, and in Nigeria we have what we call the polytechnic. In a polytechnic you can acquire an ordinary diploma and a higher diploma. Now, when you're done, you receive 2 certificates and 2 transcripts. So for instance, if after an HND you're going for a top-up program or you're going for an extended master's and you have only provided your HND transcripts and HND certificate, then they might require you to provide your OND transcript and OND certificate. So if you have incomplete documentation, basically you might be required to provide such. Now, one of the most frequent documents that they would ask you to provide would be your work references covering the time you have actually been out of work, rather out of school. So if you've had 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, if you were going for a master's, if you had such a gap, then they would want to know what you've been doing within that time. If you're going for an undergraduate program and maybe you graduated a year or 2 or 3 before you decided to go abroad, you need to let them know what you've been doing for that time you've been out of school. So these are some of the documents that you might be required to provide. Yours might not fall within what I have just said, but usually this is what the kind of documents that you'll be required to provide. So what do you do when you've received an NSF? So like I said, for the first one, there's really nothing you can do but wait. So if you have paid for like a priority service, you basically just have to wait until your timeline has elapsed, and in a lot of cases after it has elapsed you can then try to contact the UKVI. But if you receive an NSF email, it means that they've already informed you that your application might take longer than the agreed timeline, right, for the service that you've paid for, if you paid for priority or super priority. So you just have to wait. Now, what might be the reason why you are receiving an NSF, an empty NSF? One, if you're applying during the rush hour or during the rush time, the rush season. So if you're going for September intake or January intake, there is a rush season. For September, it will be in August and early September. Lots of applications, lots and lots of applications, and because of they are not able to review your documents within the timeline, the standard timeline that they have set, and because of this you might be receiving an automatic NSF just to let you know that we might not be able to finish this in the time that you have set. Okay, so that might be the reason. Another reason might be confirmation of your documents. So if you have provided certain documents that needs to be confirmed, such as your bank statement, such as your certificate, if you provided some certain certificate, if you provided certain references. So I've heard of people who their references have been verified. So I know someone who the boss was searched up on LinkedIn and called to verify that that person actually worked in their establishment, right? Rather, the boss was sent an email, not called, rather the boss was sent an email. So they might be doing additional checks. So it might be verifying your work place, they might be verifying your bank statement, so it might also be your educational qualifications, it might just basically the documents that you have submitted. These are things you have to do if you've been requested to submit a document. You need to ensure that you're scanning appropriately. You need to ensure that you're giving them exactly what they have requested for. So if they say, give us what you've been doing, verifiable references from 2014 till date, and you give them from 2016 till date, there's still 2014 to 2016. What were you doing during that period? You need to give them something to cover for that period. So you need to make sure that it is complete. You need to make sure that it is legible, so you need to scan appropriately. They can see, they can read, and also you need to read the letter if you're providing a letter. So the letter has to cover, so the letter has to say what it needs to say, because I've had instances of people who provided references but they are still requesting for references, and the reference has already covered for the set date, has covered for what they were doing, and is verifiable, but just the wordings, the way it has been worded, is probably not clear enough. It doesn't have all the information that it requires, that they require. They might request for it, so it needs to have a start date, when you started, when you ended, or if you're still currently with the organization. It needs to let them know what position that you're holding. It needs to let them know maybe your remuneration. It might be, but that is not essential. So there are certain information that they want to get. I'm going to do another video that actually talks about maybe your references and basically just going through the documents and what you need to observe. So in such a case, you need to ensure that it is complete and you're giving them what they have requested for. You also need to make sure that the email that has been provided, usually the email is long. Let me just read it very quickly. So you're going to send it to sheffieldstudentteam.requestinternal@fco.gov.uk. So for this person, this is where this person is sending it to. So just imagine how long it is. What you need to do is copy from that email, you paste it on your toe, and you send. Please don't try to type. Don't try to type, because I've had cases of people who typed incorrectly and did not notice that this message bounced, waited, and got a rejection. Why? Because they did not respond, and it was stated in the refusal, right? So it is very important that you send it to the right email. Okay, so what you need to observe: send your documentation completely, send it to the right email. It must be legible, because they might not give you another opportunity. So if they've asked you once, they might not ask you again. So what do you do if your start date is already drawing near? Well, if your start date is drawing near or has even gone past, you need to contact your school and you need to let them know that your visa is taking longer than you had anticipated, and you would like to request for an extension. Please, please, and please, you need to contact the right team. Don't talk to the finance department. Don't talk to any other department except the admissions team responsible for your case, right? They are the ones who have the power to extend your resumption. So if you have a start date of say 15th, they might extend it by 1 week, they might extend it by 2 weeks. They might give you the ability to start online and then join them, after the course has started. So please, please, and please, do not talk to the wrong team, because they simply will tell you it's not possible, and they might not refer you to the right team who can actually do it for you. This is important, because if your start date elapses and your visa comes late and your school has not extended your start date, then you might not be able to gain entrance into the UK. You'll be turned back at the border, right? Yeah. You return back at the border because the school has started and you did not resume when you were supposed to resume. And you need to make this request by email. Please send an email. You can call, you can request, but they need to respond to you by email, or you need to send an additional response by email so they respond to you, and you have an evidence. So if at the border, you need to have this email with you, letting them know that your school had approved you're coming in at a later date. So how do you contact the UKVI? Now, a lot of people, oh my goodness, you're like, oh my goodness, I've submitted this, it's been 2 weeks, it's been 3 weeks, it's been 1 week, I need to contact them, I need to know. Well, a lot of times you really can't do so much. If you contact them and it's still within the service timeline, you simply get a generic email letting you know that you need to wait and you're going to get a decision pretty soon. But sometimes this is good, right? It's a paid inquiry, just in case you're wondering. You can actually send a paid inquiry. I'm going to leave the link somewhere here so that you can go there. If you're in the UK, you can make a call to the UKVI. If you're outside the UK, you can simply send an email. It's about £2.70 something cents. I can't remember now, but it's about that. I'll have that here as well. So you can send an inquiry asking about the status of your application. Now, usually you just get a generic email letting you know that, oh, the service timeline has not elapsed, blah, 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 and you should check back once that is done or until you get a decision. But I usually encourage people to do this because sometimes it actually triggers responses. So there are times when you're waiting and nothing is done. You send an email, they send something generic to you, and all of a sudden you're getting a response, or you're getting your visa, or you're getting an invite to an interview, or you actually now maybe you got, if you got maybe an empty NSF and you had been waiting and nothing happened, and then you send that inquiry, then you receive the NSF requesting for additional documentation. So this can trigger the next step. So what else can you do? Well, I would say just pray. Just pray it comes out in time so that you do not have to miss out on your intake and your school automatically deferring you to the next session. This has happened so much. It's an unfortunate thing, and normally I would think that the schools would be more understanding in this case, being that the UKVI is the one causing the unnecessary delay. But unfortunately, a lot of times they will not extend it past a certain timeline, and you will be automatically deferred to the next session, and so you would have to reapply when that time comes. So that is the risk, and that is why it is good you start your application way before your start date, so like 2 months, 3 months even before your start date. Answer it. Have I seen success stories from people who have received NSF in the past? Oh my goodness, yes. Receiving an NSF doesn't mean that it's the end of the world or you're not going to get your visa. It just means it's going to be delayed. They might have to do some extra checks. But yes, I've seen lots and lots. I've seen, I would say 90 to 95% of the NSF stories I've seen have been successful, has been good, especially when you're working with your school. Your school, usually they understand this. They will work with you. They will give you as much allowance as necessary in a lot of cases, because of course they don't want to lose you. But if it drags on for too long, the unfortunate thing would be that you might not get your visa out in time for you to resume, and you would need to go with the next intake. So that would be the disadvantage here. But in a lot of cases it's a success. Now, in a few cases it leads to an interview, and also for the interview I've had more success stories than not. I would say 85 to 90% of the cases have been success stories, but there have been some unsuccessful stories, people who did not pass their interview, and because of this their visa was denied. So that is why you need to subscribe to this channel and wait for my next video, which is going to be talking about interviews. So how long does it take when you have responded to the UKVI? So if you've gotten an NSF requesting for documentation, now from the minute you send that document and it is received by them, it takes another 15 working days. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry if you are waiting, I'm so sorry, but there is good news somewhere here. Just hold on, okay? So it takes it restarts the process. So if you've paid for priority, super priority, whatever it is that you have paid for, if you do receive an NSF requesting for additional document, it resets your application timeline, and then it takes it to the standard timeline. They start working from it once your full documentation has been received. Do you understand? So it takes another 15 working days. But in my experience, most times, I would say 80% of the time, you receive a decision within a week upon receiving upon responding to your NSF, right? So within a week, sometimes within 3 days, within 4 working days, within 5 working days, and in some cases within 2 weeks, right? So just be hopeful that your case is going to fall within the 1 to 2 weeks timeline, just so that you're not waiting too long. And I would advise that if you've been waiting for such a long time, please send a paid inquiry, an email requesting for information, right? this can trigger the next action. So it might actually help you get your visa out in time, even if they give you a generic message, or it might lead to an interview or requesting you for additional documentation, which would have delayed you further. So I would advise that if you waited long enough, please send a paid mail. If you have further questions, if I've not been able to answer all your questions in this video, since I don't want it to be too long, please check out my other videos that might already be on this channel, as this is my first video and this is a series that I'm making. However, if you want to contact me directly, you can do so. There is going to be a link in the description that takes you directly to me. But mind you, this is paid. So if you want to contact me, you want to ask questions and you want me to review your case or review documents that you're sending to the UKVI in response to a request, then you can do so, okay? But if not, please drop a comment on this video asking specific questions and I'm going to do well to answer them, right? So I will be giving answers to questions in the comments, and I'll also be responding via video, so you can also check out other videos that I would be having on my channel. In addition to that, if you want a one-on-one, then you can go ahead and use the link in the bio to contact me to review your documents, to help you or explain if there are certain peculiar instances with your case that can actually give you some sense of clarity and also some, respite from the anxiety that you might be feeling. So we have come to the end of this video. Till the next video, thank you for watching and bye.